Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be talking about my first year of triathlon racing this season 2022. So I'll be going through what I've learnt and tips and pointers for anyone else new to the sport, as I've been completely new to the sport starting this year. So I'll be going through my results, highlights, what I've learnt, and then little tips and tricks as well. So to start with my results, they should be popping up on the screen hopefully now. So basically it's gone a lot better than I expected it to go. I was sort of going for like top 10s, that sort of thing, but I managed to get quite a few podium finishes and a couple of wins, age group and overall wins. So I've managed to qualify for the age group Worlds Aquabike and then the European Triathlon. I didn't go for the Worlds Triathlon, it's the same thing to qualify for the Worlds or the Europeans, you get to decide. I didn't go for the Worlds Triathlon because it was just a bit too far away. Whereas next year I think I'm looking at Spain and Belgium for the aquabike and the triath. So that's a better start than flying off really far. So my highlights this year, favourite races, probably the London standard distance, so Olympic distance triathlon. Love that. I didn't get to really appreciate the sights of London too much because my head was down in a TT position and the run was just along the dock. So not too much of the sights, although we did go past the London Eye and other sort of attractions, but like I say, unfortunately didn't get a big chance to appreciate that, unfortunately. I also like the Bournemouth Aquabike. It was the last race I did of the year. I enjoy aquabikes because it's my two strongest sports anyway. It was also my first sea swim in a race, which I loved. The roads were fast, they're fairly quiet for the dual carriageway that it was, and everyone was really friendly there, and it was a great race. So what have I learned? First of all, it's a lot harder than I thought it would be. First one was a sprint distance triathlon, and it was absolutely brutal to be honest. Only 400 meter swim, but I jumped out of that and I was pretty dead to be honest, and then jumped on the bike. Legs just weren't there at all. It was a bit windy as well. My saddle height wasn't quite right because I hadn't adjusted it for my racing tri-suit. It was in my bib shorts, which has got a thicker pad, and everything just wasn't quite right. It took me about 10 minutes to warm up. Obviously the cycle was only like 20-25 minutes anyway. So by the time I'd warmed up on the bike, I was coming back into transition. I didn't spot the transition line. Luckily it was a really local one, so no one really minded too much. Everyone was really friendly, which is what I'd recommend to do a nice local one. So I jumped off. Transitions were both horrendous, really slow. Getting my trainers on didn't happen. And then the run, I was pretty dead for the run. I was fairly happy with my performance on the swim and the run, but the bike was no good at all. So like I say, it was just a lot harder than I thought it would be. It was just an hour, or slightly under an hour. So with the things that I've done with my swimming background, I've done a lot of racing so far. I've also done a bit of cycle racing, I've done the 500k. So I've done a lot of big challenges, and I thought this wouldn't be too bad, but the intensity is just way up there, just max out for an hour. So don't underestimate it like I did. So the transitions is my next thing that I learned. Transition practice is really important if you're going for the wins or the podium spots, especially in sprint Olympic distance. You can save 30 seconds, 15 seconds quite easily. You know, if you could get that free off your swim, then you take it. So practice those transitions, see what it's like to put your shoes on, your trainers on without socks when they're a bit damp, because your feet will still be damp coming off the bike. They won't be wet, they'll be damp, and it's really hard actually, even with talc powder, to get them on quickly. So you want to get elastic laces, and there's a lot of tips and tricks for that, but definitely give it a go. Jumping onto the bike, if you're going to put your shoes in the bike, ready to go with elastic bands, practice getting on. I didn't really, and I jumped on and it was an interesting experience. So yeah, work on those transitions, it's free speed. Okay, next up, setting up transition takes a lot longer than you think. When you don't know what you're doing on that first race, it took me a really long time. After a few races you get a little system, you know where everything is. But those first couple of times, you don't know what's going on. You get there, you're not really sure how to set it up in the first place, and you don't want to be rushing for time. So I usually get there, if I've pre-registered, I usually get there a minimum of an hour before the race starts. So this gives you a bit of time to park, walk there, because sometimes it's a really long walk from the car park to transition if it's a big race. So set up transition. If it's a bigger race like Leeds or London, then I'll give a bit longer time. Ideally, like I say, you've pre-registered the night before, if possible. So you've got your helmet stickers on, your bike stickers on. So what you're going to do is rock up, rack your bike, put your stuff out. If there's registration on the day and there's no pre-registration, then you've got about an hour and a half, if not longer. If you get there early, if your race is early, then that's better because the queues will obviously be shorter, but sometimes registration queues can be 20 minutes, half an hour, so you can be waiting a really long time. Then you've got to put everything on your bikes, stickers and your helmet. So definitely give yourself more time than you think you need. So I was in such a rush during the Leeds triathlon that I actually left my wetsuit in the car. Luckily, my parents were there, very supportive, and my dad ran back to the car, set a new run PB, I think, got my wetsuit, and then we were literally about 30 seconds from starting, and he chucked the wetsuit to me and I whacked it on. Luckily, the guys at Leeds, the race organisers, were accepting of that because the water was freezing and I was there in my tri-suit. That wouldn't have happened if we'd left more time, so leave more time. So next up, everyone I've found so far has been really friendly and supportive. Obviously during a race you are racing people, they're not your friends during the race, but before and after people will be very willing to give you advice. Just talk to them, they'll be happy to talk usually. Afterwards obviously everyone's sort of shaking hands and there's good sportsmanship, so don't be scared about going to your first triathlon, especially if it's a local one. Everyone there is just going to be really supportive. If you've got any questions, the marshals are usually fantastic. If it is local and they're volunteer marshals, sometimes they don't know what's going on, they're just directing you, say on the run course or the bike course, but usually someone does know what's going on. Okay, next up, this one's a bit of a moan to be honest. Drafting on the bike section is a bit of a problem. Okay, so on the small local races, it doesn't really matter. But London and Leeds say there wasn't many marshals on the bike course. There were people, there's like marshals and then there's people watching the crossings and stuff. I suppose you call them marshals as well, but I would say they're different. You've got like British Triathlon marshals and then just people that are there. So the people helping cross the roads, they're just there for that. They're making sure you're safe and the spectators are safe. However, what was lacking at London and Leeds was the BTF, British Triathlon marshals, and they wear different tops, and they were actually checking drafting and kit and stuff. There was quite a few on the run. I unzipped my top on the run, which you're not allowed to do, so that I got called up for that, but you don't get disqualified like you would in like swimming. You just zip it back up and you carry on. But on the bike course, I didn't literally see anyone. And I looked behind myself on a couple of corners and I had a string of like 10 people, a massive train just drafting me on the bike. You know, you overtake someone and then you just get on your wheel, basically. So that was a bit of an annoyance, to be honest. So if you've got a strong bike, then people will get on your wheel and usually no one's going to be there. The only one that had really good marshalling was Bournemouth Aquabike, and I think that's because it was a British Champs triathlon, so the marshals were out already, so they had their motorbikes and they were patrolling really well. No one was drafting on that. That was a really, really good event, well run. But like I say, don't be surprised if you have people on your wheel, because it will happen and there's no marshals there to stop them usually. Okay, last, you don't need the best setup to be quick. As long as you've got trainers and bike, you're good to go. Okay, ideally, if you've got a road bike, what I did to start with, you've got your clip-on bars for your TT setup, because your position on the bike is much more important than the bike itself. If you've got a carbon bike, even better, but you can get very good aluminium bikes as long as your gears work, it's all good. So no one's going to judge you on your setup, to be honest. If you're on a road bike and you're overtaking someone with a pointy helmet on their TT bike, it's a very pleasant feeling. Okay, maybe not for the guy you're overtaking, but for yourself it's always quite satisfying. So I do have a TT bike now, just because I'm trying to shave off those seconds. But like I said, to start with, I was just on a road bike. I didn't even have clip-on bars for my first race. And there's plenty of people out there just using road bikes. You don't need the best trainers, as long as they're decent ones, it's fine. Usually smaller local ones have got off-road sections. Even Leeds had quite a long gravel section. Spend money on coaching rather than equipment, I would say, to start with. So next thing I've learned, pacing is extremely important. So don't max out your swim, don't max out your bike, because remember, you've got a run at the end. It might seem simple sitting here now, but when you get caught up in the moment, people are overtaking you, whatever, you're overtaking people, you get excited. It's very easy to go too hard too soon. You'll only learn this with time and experience. I've sort of managed to settle into a rhythm. I've got my power numbers sorted, my pacing sorted. Like I say, with swimming backgrounds, my swim pacing is pretty okay because I know what I can do. But I've seen a lot of people who just blow up and die on the run because I've just gone out too hard, basically. So don't get caught up in the moment. Okay, I have touched on this one. shoes are really hard to get on and off. And don't wear no socks if you're not used to it, because you will get blisters, and you don't want blisters because that stops training, it stops racing. So either wear socks or train without socks beforehand to get used to it, and be prepared for how hard it is to get your shoe actually on. Okay, another pointer, you probably won't get the nutrition that you're intending to get. So I usually have a bottle. I usually don't get a chance to drink it that much on the bike. For Olympic distance, for sprint distance, you don't really need anything. You can have like a gel, say. For Olympic distance, you do need a bit of nutrition. 2 hours is too long to go without anything, in my opinion. But like I say, it's harder to take a gel than you think when you're in race mode, especially on a TT bike, and you don't drink as often as you think you will. So you can set an alarm on your Garmin, or just actively try and remember. And then on the run, you can leave some stuff for T2, and you can take some stuff on the run with you. Usually I just rely on like water stations or feed stations. For Olympic, and less anyway. So yeah, you can plan out, basically what I'm saying is you can plan out this strategy, but be prepared for it to go wrong. I lost a bottle as well on a really long aqua bike, on a 75 mile bike, and it was hot, and my torpedo fell off, the cable ties ripped, and I wasn't prepared for that. So all of my nutrition just went out the window. I had to rethink, I had to get stuff from feed stations instead. I had to stop a lot more than I was expecting, so expect something to go wrong, especially with your nutrition. Okay, and my final tip is to learn the courses. Okay, I've gone wrong once, I've nearly gone catastrophically wrong a second time. Okay, first time I went wrong on the swim course. The buoys were really complicated. Because I'm a swimmer, I try and get out at the front so I don't have anyone to follow. So it's a real problem for me if I don't know the course. If you're planning to make it up on the bike or the run, then obviously the swim course, you just follow people. But if you're looking to get out there on the swim course, then make sure you know the course. Make sure you definitely know it, because I thought I did and I didn't. Second time was at London, but that's because the signage was terrible at London. Basically do a big loop and then a smaller loop, and then the split for the two. You're meant to do the big loop first and then the small loop second, but the split, you have to actively come off of the small loop onto the big loop, rather than what I thought it would be, which is you're put onto the big loop and then you have a choice to turn off of the small loop. So it's the wrong way around from what I thought it would be. Luckily, I spotted someone that I was racing in front of me, and he turned off last second, and I quickly managed to swerve and follow him. But if he hadn't done that, I probably would have gone the wrong way, to be honest. Okay, so lastly, let's talk about tactics. So people are strong usually on the run. That's the standard thing for triathlon for me. Being a swimmer, obviously the swim is my strong point, swim and bike. So I have to set off on the swim first. So I have to put out a lot of energy really, because I have to guarantee that I get out of the water first, and then try and either hold it or increase the gap on the bike, and then basically hope that they're not fast enough to catch me on the run. So I would prefer to be the other way around. I prefer to be a chaser. I don't like running away from people. I prefer to try and catch up, but it's the way it is. I can't change it. So just think about what your strong points are and how you're going to do it. So if you're not a swimmer, don't kill yourself to try and keep up with the swimmers on the swim. Okay, you'll catch them on something else. Someone's going to have a weakness somewhere, and sometimes that'll be your strength. Okay, so as soon as that gun goes on the swim, it's your race. Okay, essentially really it's a time trial. Okay, ignore everyone else, do your swim, do your bike, catch them up on the run or whatever you're going to do. Okay, but make sure you know that before you go into it, and don't get caught up in the moment. So I hope you've enjoyed those tips and tricks. If you have any more questions on them, then leave them down in the comments and I'll try and get back to you. If you enjoy this sort of video, then please let me know, give it a like, and I'll see you again very soon in the next video.